Hello, everybody, and today I'm going to be sharing my opinion about JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. So, as you can all tell by watching all this, I have watched the entirety of all the episode that is currently available on Crunchyroll, and yeah, I have been so. How exactly did I just go on our way of watching JoJo's Bizarre Adventure? Honestly, it's kind of difficult to explain, and I really don't think that's important. But what I would like to talk about is this entire thing in itself. So, when I started watching JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, I honestly didn't know what to think about it because when I first really started watching this, I had very weird expectation of it because of all the meme and jokes you always see about JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. And and I'm gonna say though, at first I was skeptical, really honestly, about it. And yeah, so I want to start talking about each potentially season and just kind of give my overall thoughts. So the first season, in my experience, I would say was the most of them all so far. Um, and I would say the problem I found the first season was that it felt like just everybody just kept dying, and there was not really a lot of it. I feel like that makes sense. It just kind of felt like it was just like everything just round up to where the real JoJo's Bizarre Adventures come up, and yeah, I don't really know. Like this first season I've been seeing here has always just one of the least memorable one in my experience. And then just the fact that everybody just keep dying left and right just did not help it. And it's just you didn't really get to like the character enough because everybody just kept dying left and right, and sorry, there just wasn't really much good reason living about it. And yeah, the first season to me though, there was just this it just wasn't as great in my experience, and I find myself just kept seeing so much an issue with the first seasons that everybody just kept dying, and all the characters just felt like that. Just there's no really reason for them to be in them, and they didn't really live long enough to actually get to even have an opinion or really have any interesting in them. In my experience, yeah, the first as a all the first season, my experience was not particularly great. But then you get to Stardust Crusade, and this is where I will say it's. I can clearly see this is where JoJo's Bizarre Adventure definitely starts to get good, all in all, considering what JoJo's Bizarre Adventure was all about. And this is definitely here where you see like the good thing about JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, because there's a lot of it, and there really is just a lot that makes it very very good. Um, Especially when you get to some of the more interesting stand user in of itself, like the blind guy, which I found to be an interesting one, and the one with the magnetic capability, I feel like was personally one of my favorite one because I feel like that was one of the more hilarious stand, just very very funny. The dog, I don't know what to think of. I kind of thought the two episodes that they gave to the dog was not particularly well justified in my experience. And obviously, we all know the famous yes, yes, no meme throughout the time. And it's really, really hard to just. I can clearly see why there's a lot of people making meme about it, which made it hard for me to really get into the series at first. But yeah, Stardust Crusade. It definitely got better from the first season, and all like my perfectly thing I'll say that got better about Starlight Crusade was pretty obviously because they kind of stopped having everyone getting murdered in mere minutes, and now they're actually trying to keep them alive. In my experience, but then they just kind of get to the last episodes, and then they just killed them all, which I kind of felt like was a little cheap, almost like they did it just to get a reaction. But I kind of get what they had. I kind of get what they were trying to go for. There was just part about me who kind of felt like it's that part that could have done a little bit better. The last season, or the last episode, I think was not done that perfect. Beyond that, most of the episode in Stardust Crusade was really done well, in my experience. And having watched the entirety of Stardust Crusade, have how do I say this? It's really hard to explain the overall interesting for this because having watched this now, I can totally tell that you really need to become a fan of this entire genre just to have any understanding of it, because a lot of it is hard to understand and there's quite a lot into it, but it is really impressive in a lot of aspects. I mean, the animation of this is pretty good. I will still say Stardust Crusade's animation and overall animation quality and art style, I think, was the best. It's really hard to beat that, in my experience, which then we obviously come towards the next one, which is Diamond Unbreakable. This is also where I will have some problem because the fact that they're changing the art style a little, I don't know, I found um, Diamond Unbreakable's art style to be the second best in my experience. Um, it was the first particular thing that a little weirded me out. Like, why did they change the art style in some aspect? I kind of feel that was a little, that was a little, I wasn't particularly fond of that. I will say though, my weirdest experience of Diamond Unbreakable was I kept feeling like Diamond Unbreakable's this weird attempt on making a slice of life out of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. I really don't know why. I think it's because everything was happening just in one area all the time, which is usually how I see most slice of life. I know that's a bit weird to call it that, but having watched Diamond Unbreakable it was a weird experience because holy shit! I mean, talk about a lot of stuff like the fucking kid who kept getting kidnapped and treated really poorly. I mean, this child, or whatever you can really say about him, he seems to have just been through some absolute hell on earth throughout this entire season. First and foremost, like bloody hell. Um, but I will say though, they did a lot of things right in this season. Instead of just going around murdering everyone in some of the most ridiculous way, in my experience. Um, uh, it's really hard to like giving an opinion about this. But Diamond Unbreakable, I will say, is my second favorite out of the season because it does a lot of things right that I don't see a lot of anime does these days. Um, and Diamond Unbreakable, I would definitely say is it's its own kind of approach. I'm gonna say it's like its own experiment, and pretty well done. Not in my experience, it's perfect, but from my experience, I think it does a lot of things right that really not a lot of anime I feel like today is capable of achieving. Um, however, I will say though, some of these stands in my experience, just makes no sense in my experience. That's one particular thing that both Diamond Unbreakable and Stardust Crusade, some of these stands is a little out of the ordinary and my experience really does not make sense. From my personal experience, that's the problem in of itself. Beyond that, I will say though that is like the one particular thing I was to say, but so then we get to the golden win. I really don't know what to think about it. I think this is one of the more out of left field because like I kept thinking that well it's called JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, but where is JoJo? Where is like the character from the world next to JoJo? Most of these characters are all just technically just a bunch of gang members. So I really don't know. Like the Goldwyn season, I think was one of the more. I mean, I definitely say the character is definitely good in his own right, but at the same time, there was this part about it that I wasn't getting in the same way as I was with the other JoJos because there wasn't really much of JoJo himself. So I kept having this kind of expectation that he was gonna make an appearance. But no. Um. So yeah. But in overall, I will say my most biggest criticism to JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is that one, a lot of the stand I felt like didn't make a lot of sense. That just made them a little BS just for the sake of it. And there wasn't really much explanation in my experience. Why? That was one particular criticism. My other particular criticism is just how exactly they're trying to, and they're never trying to explain something. It always feels like they keep forgetting that. Oh, hey, by the way, this guy. Oh yeah, this guy has this and that. And oh, Dio apparently has a son. Wow, fucking shocker. Apparently, he has a son. Apparently, despite the fact that he goes around murdering every single woman that he has, like fucking sucking up their blood. Ugh. That's one particular thing really, I really don't know what to think about that. A lot of the plots just really feels like it's thrown around left and right. Not really much fault. My other particularly criticism, and I know some people is gonna find this criticism really, really bad. I just find the ridiculous one of masculine men was a little. That was a particular reason why I'll personally say I find these two episodes just a little bit better, purely because the woman who appeared in this, I feel like her and her stand, I felt like just made a lot of sense. Because a stand that can control magnetic was definitely a more of like a stand I think makes sense. Whereas a lot of the other stands is really just bullshitly ridiculous. And the fact they actually choose to actually have a woman who doesn't look like an extremely ugly bastard was a little refreshing in comparison between the other female stand users that fought was just all a bunch of ugly bastards. Because I think it's just, you don't have to make them look bad in order to make them be the bad guys. That was like one of the particular thing I saw that I was not the biggest fan of. Because I kind of felt like they was just doing that just to like villainizing them. And it's the same thing with the old hack. It's like, you don't have to make them look bad to make them realize that they are the bad. It's just, that's one of the like thing I never really liked. When you make someone look bad, that is really, really almost. I know I shouldn't say this, but it is feel like a little racist to have it look like that. To like interpreting someone's facial look as being like, oh, this person looks terrible. He must be the bad guys. No, you shouldn't do that. It's just that just does not make sense. Making someone look bad does not justify them from being bad. Because then you could look at old people, because they obviously look terrible, and then like, oh, he looks old, he's a bad guy, right? No. So, how they approach to like the woman, and how they approach towards the enemy, how they looked. I think Stardust Crusade was one of the problems with that. While they got to Diamond Unbreakable, they kind of fixed that in issue by actually like make them look like more normal people. Well, normal you could say, not like normal in terms of their stand, but in normal in terms of their facial looks. I will say. Um, but yeah, in my experience, if I would say, I would have definitely giving an overall my overall current rating out of 1 out of 10. I would have definitely given it just an 8, honestly, because there's a couple of reasons why. One, a lot of the memes and jokes people make about it kind of ruined it, in my experience. Because whenever I watched certain part, I just kept having these thought that, there's a lot of these certain part of it, you can clearly tell some of them was part from the memes and everything, like to be continued, and the yes, no, from example, which to me is it kind of ruined it a little in my experience because you have seen all these jokes every time and you just kind of knows that, which to me was one of the reasons why I giving it this rating. The second reason was because I kind of felt like that a lot of the part of the entire of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure just kind of felt like it was its own experiment itself, which every single season did something right and did something wrong. Like the first season, it had a lot of good like story and character, but it just kind of felt like that you didn't really enough to like the character because it just kept getting killed all the time. And then you get the Stardust Crusade, and then they kind of fixed that in the issue. But then they also kind of give them that whole like plot armor. You can kind of tell Joe Stardust Crusade was where the whole idea of plot armor really showcased itself ridiculously a lot. Uh, and then you got to like the near ending, and then nearly everybody just gets murdered left and right. Not exactly the best approach, but I can see what they were trying to go for. And then you get down Unbreakable, and then it kind of feels like it's its own almost genre in itself, in my experience, because it just kind of feels like a weird slice of life almost in a way. I know it isn't, but just my kind of weird thought about it. And then Golden Wing, again, just it kind of feels like its own genre, just because it doesn't feel like JoJo's Bizarre in the same way some of the other ones does, just because it's a complete different character that isn't really JoJo itself. But at the same time, it is just again, there's a lot of time where it does one thing and it's just completely does another thing completely different, and it does in a good way, but it also does in a bad way, in my experience. So yeah, um, so to me that is like mainly one of the reason why um I give it a rating. It's not the worst rating I've been giving in comparison between others, because there's been others out there that give way worse rating in my experience. But again, I can definitely see why people like this series. It's good. It doesn't sucks. It has good quality. It has good animation to it. Um, and I could definitely see myself watching some it more in the future when the next season comes. Apparently, I've heard it's gonna be with a female Joshua. About what I've heard. So, yeah. Over that though, this is my particular experience and opinion about JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. I hope you found this enlightening, or you just found me just to be rambling, which I kind of felt like I did. Um, but yeah, that's just again, it's not a bad season. It's not a bad series. It's good in its own way. And with that said, I'm gonna cut this one off, and I'll be seeing you all in the next time. Bye bye.